This is one of the biggest autocrafter for every die in Minecraft. It features an endless supply of all 16 dies, unlimited wool in every color, a fully automated storage system, and the most terrifying farm, where one mistake could mean losing everything, all built in Minecraft Hardcore. I started by cutting down a massive forest and created an outline which looks huge compared to me. Because the farm is absolutely massive, I have to build most of it underground. That's why I need to excavate this large area here. And the fastest way to do this is with the magical boomstick contraption. So I set up 6 of them and started excavating this area. While I'm trying to fix the TNT duper, let me tell you about today's game plan. So, there are 3 main steps to tackle this whole thing. Since I need over 20,000 blocks of wool, step 1 is to build a farm that can actually handle that insane amount. Step 2 is to make individual farms for each color, because I've got to fill in this massive color circle. And the final step, well, that's just gathering resources for the crafter and then building it. Easy, right? With the Boom Boom Maker finally operational again, we had to check how deep we are. -5, yeah, that should be deep enough. Any further and we might hit bedrock or China, not sure which comes first. So after the magical boomstick contraption had done its thing and left behind a massive crater, I went full dismantling mode and took it apart like it was a cheap IKEA shelf. Building the outline first wasn't the smartest idea. Classic YouTube move. Could have just blown everything up and then built the outline, but nah, gotta make the intro look epic, right? Now let's fix it and pretend I knew exactly what I was doing from the start. After the outline was fixed and I had a perfect cube again, because you know, that's what every Minecraft build needs. I started running around in circles, trying to figure out where to start. Spoiler, I had no idea what I was doing. But hey, luckily there's the power of editing, so I can just pretend like I had a plan all along. So, let's tackle step 1, building the wool farm that can handle the insane amount of wool I need. Now most of you are probably thinking, oh, he's just gonna build a sheep farm, right? Nope, that would take forever, and let's be real, I don't have time for that. Instead, I'm going full on string duper mode. Yeah, that's right, I'm gonna duplicate string and turn it into wool. I hope my world doesn't corrupt, lol. Just kidding, I know exactly what I'm doing. Totally. I've got this under control probably. Oh right, I totally forgot. My past self had the brilliant idea to get netherite before I start building. So here's a solid hour of me trying to find netherite, all crammed into about 10 seconds. Yeah, this is definitely how the pros do it. So, after finally obtaining my precious netherite pickaxe, I thought, alright, now it's time to get serious and focus on the real task, the string duper. But then the procrastination kicked in hard. Instead of diving right into the duper, I spent the next 4 hours messing around with everything else. First, I realized I needed a ton of white concrete powder, since the majority of the farm structure was going to be made out of it. No big deal, right? Well, off to the end I went. Step 1. Glitch out the bedrock. It's not a bug, folks, it's a feature. Done. Step 2. Build this absolutely weird contraption that basically turns falling blocks like sand or white concrete into an infinite supply. The white concrete gets pushed into the end portal and spawns back in the overworld, right at the spawn point. Now, because the spawn point is always loaded, the concrete just drops to the ground like a gift from the Minecraft gods. So, after some tinkering and testing different ways to collect all the falling blocks without losing my mind, I finally came up with a decent solution. Yeah, it looks a bit weird, but hey, it works. We listen and we don't judge. And to my surprise, it actually worked really well. Within a few minutes, I had shulker boxes full of sand and white concrete powder. Easy, right? Feeling like a genius, I took a moment to admire my work. And then it hit me. Time to turn that powder into actual concrete. This is where things got a bit tedious. Thinking I'd only need a couple more hours to finish everything, I started converting the white concrete powder, and let me tell you, it's not exactly a speedy process. After realizing I was going to be here for quite a while, I built myself a cozy little hut and went AFK for what felt like several lifetimes. Meanwhile, I figured I'd entertain myself. So naturally, I watched a golf anime about a kid who, well, that's a whole other story. Finally, after what felt like years, okay, maybe just a few episodes, I had enough white concrete. Victory, right? But wait, turns out I still needed a ridiculous amount of glass to finish the farm. And guess what? I hadn't even started smelting the sand yet. Classic. So, what did I do? Procrastination mode engaged. Instead of just smelting the sand in some normal furnaces, I decided to throw together a super smelter. Without a tutorial, because I clearly love a challenge. Spoiler alert, the super smelter worked kinda. But let's just say, it's not going to win any beauty contests. But hey, it does the job. With the sand finally smelting away, I was back to focusing on the main event, the string duper. So, I packed up my shulker boxes with everything I'd need and headed down to the level where the string duper was going to be built. Now, some of you might be wondering, how do you even know what height to build this thing so it doesn't blow up your perfectly constructed outline? Well, let me explain that while I totally pretend I'm not messing up the build in the background. The answer's simple. I went full nerd mode and built the entire farm and structure in a creative world first. Then, I saved it as a schematic using a mod called Litematica. Now, Litmatica's main feature is that it shows you a hologram version of your build, block by block, so you know exactly where to place everything, which is super handy when dealing with redstone contraptions because one tiny mistake and boom, everything's ruined. And there's no way I'm trusting myself to eyeball that in my actual world. Oh, and by the way, big shout out to Potato Noir, links in the description. Most of the dye farm I'm about to construct comes from his design. I've just made a few tweaks so it can craft wool, but more on that later. And don't worry, if I mess this up, we'll just pretend it was all part of the plan. So while you were distracted, I went ahead and finished the string duper, defended my super smelter from a creeper and got some sleep. Okay, now it's showtime. Let me demonstrate how the string duper works. It didn't work. After fixing my mistake by setting up the crafter the right way, it worked. First try, obviously. The way this thing works is actually super simple. I'll spare you the nerdy details, but basically the string gets funneled into the auto crafters, which then magically transform it into wool. Oh, and that don't worry, I'll fix this part later. Now, it's time to tackle step 2. Remember what that was? Right, building a farm for every dye and filling out the color ring. For whatever reason, I decided to fill in the color ring now, because obviously white wool doesn't need dye. No worries, I'll deal with the white dye later. Oh, and by the way, I only needed 1446 blocks of white wool for this part, so I picked up the white line of wool like it was something else and started working. And now, enjoy this satisfying time lapse of me filling in the wool. Honestly, this time lapse could be one of those TikTok videos that play under other videos to stop people from swiping away. Perfect for anyone with the attention span of a goldfish. And now I just have to do this 15 more times. Yeah, no big deal, right? So I jumped straight back into action and got to work, wasting no time. Okay, maybe a little procrastination, but still making progress. My first priority was building the storage system and setting up the autocrafter for all the wool, because this needs to stop. I started by lining the item transport paths with ice and added water. It's basically the IKEA version of item transport. Super cheap, but it works. Then I moved on to the autocrafter for the wool. This crafty little thing can mix any dye color with wool, and with just the press of a button, boom, colorful wool everywhere. When I reached the level where the main platform was supposed to go, I spontaneously decided to build it. Why not, right? Where there's currently air, there'll soon be a colorful floor. Then I tackled building half of the storage system for the wool. It felt like building with a 3D printer. After placing all the chests and burning through half the wood I'd farmed earlier, I switched to the redstone, laid down more ice for item transport and got everything prepped for action. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I also decided to fill in the main platform with glass, just for the vibes. Then I grabbed some water buckets and started placing water, finishing up the item elevator in the process. Because, you know, it's not Minecraft without a little water physics. Next, I focused on the hoppers, the unsung heroes that'll sort my items. Here's how it works. These bad boys can only hold a certain amount of items, and once they hit a specific threshold, they let the rest through. If you set filter items in them, plus the block you actually want to sort, only that block will make it to its rightful spot. Now I just have to pray that no rogue stick sneaks into the system and blows the whole thing up, because, trust me, that'd turn my sorting paradise into chaos. But hey, that's a problem for future me to deal with. After that, I went ahead and tested if everything was working. So, if I drop a dye of my choice into this chest, let's say red, and I've got enough white wool in stock, the system will automatically craft red wool and sort it for me. Well, at least the crafting part worked perfectly. As for the sorting, yeah, I still have to set up the filter for every dropper. Let's just say that's a task for future me to deal with. After finishing the storage system for the wool, I took a look at this graphic here. It shows how each color can be crafted, and I decided to build farms for blue and light gray. As you can see here, you can get blue from cornflowers and light gray from oxeye daisies. You could also get blue from lapis, but that's way too complicated. Oh, and by the way, this entire build is only in this specific spot, because I needed a flower biome where these two flowers spawn next to each other. So I went ahead and picked this exact spot, tested it with bone meal to make sure I was right, and then started building the farm here. Of course, before I could start, I had to fill in this annoying water section because part of the farm is underground. Why? Because if I shift even one block up or down, a different type of flower starts spawning. Don't ask me how I figured that out. After filling it all in with sand, I immediately had to tear it all down again to create this cool hole. Then I gathered everything I needed and started building the farm. Once the main build was done, I wasted a good 5 minutes figuring out how to place the water here. Here's how the farm works. The water flows over the ground at precise intervals, and underneath, a hopper pushes bone meal against the dirt to make flowers spawn on top. Since this is a flower biome and only these specific flowers spawn here, they get broken immediately after spawning and are washed forward by the water. Oh, and this part will later connect to the storage system. After placing the rest of the water, I ignored the trader who fell into my hole, fought for my life, and then got chased by a horde of spiders while trying to sleep. Classic Minecraft Tuesday. You've probably noticed by now that I'm not the smartest when it comes to chronological order, because while recording I realized I needed a ton of bone meal to run the farm. So I quickly built this super fast Bonemeal Farm. How it works exactly, I'll spare you the details. I didn't even understand it myself. Then I noticed something was off because the farm wasn't working properly. Turns out I was just missing one item in a hopper. Don't ask me how long it took to figure that out. Next, I wanted to show you where the bone meal drops, and Minecraft decided my elytra was just for decoration and gave me a nice 70 block fall damage surprise. Okay, this might look super unplanned and chaotic chaotic with the bone meal just falling randomly, but trust me, it all makes sense. Perfect, problem solved. Just kidding, I'll fix it later, but for now I have enough bone meal to run the farm. So I went ahead, filled up the farm and collected the fruits of my hard labor. Then I threw the dye from the flowers into my autocrafter and let the magic happen. After waiting for about an hour, I had enough blue wool to move on and fill out the next color section. And now, the time lapse you've all been waiting for. This time, I'll actually shut up and let you watch in peace. After that, I grabbed the grey wool and did the same thing again, shutting up and letting you enjoy the show. So, with 3 out of 16 colors done and dusted, I dove straight back into work, no rest for the wicked. This time I started building the storage system for the dyes, because so far I've only had the wool storage running. First up, I got to work on these 2 fancy glass tubes and a bit of redstone down below. The redstone here, pretty much the same deal as my wool autocrafter, except this one has a Daylex feature. I can actually mix and match 2 colors of dye. Fancy, right? Next, I slapped down all the chests and hoppers, because what's a storage system without those? And then got busy setting up the redstone to manage all the hoppers. Oh, and don't worry, I laid down some ice on top like I always do, framed it with some item frames and dumped water in all the places that needed water. Then I set up the filter items in the hoppers. With that, the dye storage system was technically done. Well, not really, but hey, my attention span is worse than an iPad kid on a sugar rush. So I immediately switched gears and started building the transport system for oxeye daisies and cornflowers. Let's talk about this waterway made of ice. It's a masterpiece of questionable engineering. To this day, I have no idea why I made it out of glass. But hey, it looks cool, right? After that, I made all the seeds disappear, then wasted a solid 5 minutes trying to connect the farm to the transport system. Classic me. Oh, and of course, more water was added, because that's how we roll. Then came the part where I tried to remember how these crafters work. It didn't happen. So I had it down, noticed there were sticks clogging up the system. Honestly, can someone explain to me how that even happened? Removed them and finally set the crafters to convert my flowers straight into dye. Grabbed a few oxeye daisies, set the filter right, and boom, flawless operation. Feeling all proud. I flew over to the farm to start it up, and that's when it happened. The jump scare of my life, out of nowhere. A creeper decided to audition for the role of farm demolisher and almost blew up everything I worked on. I barely survived, killed the bomb lobber, and started the farm to check if the flowers were flowing where they should be. But wait, why was bone meal showing up here? Alright, I totally forgot about the filter system I installed to eliminate seeds faster than I could, even converting them into bone meal and sending it right back into the system. Fixed that quickly and voila, the system worked perfectly. Fully automated grey and blue dye. Well, almost, but we'll get to that later. Then, because focusing on one thing is overrated, I switched projects again and started building the farm for the next 4 dyes. Rose bushes give red, sunflowers give yellow, lilacs give magenta, and peonies give pink. So naturally, I built a tiny farm for those. I'll explain how it works later, but let's just say it's genius. Next up, I tackled the bone meal supply issue, which was just chilling in a random chest. So I built another ice and glass path that currently looks extremely well thought out, if you trust me, which you probably shouldn't. Anyway, the bone meal gets dropped into the water stream and flows right to the farm. Oh, and where the random blocks are, yeah, future farms are going there. Now you'd think I'd test the farm at this point, right? Nope, wrong again. Instead, I got distracted and started connecting the bone meal supply to the blue and grey dye farms. Guess what? Another water and ice track, because why make things the hard way? So now, the bone meal takes the longest journey of its life before finally landing in my chest. It looks so dumb, but hey, it works. Finally, I got around to testing the farm, and honestly, it's that simple. Bone meal duplicates the flour drops to the ground, and a minecart underneath scoops it up, eating it straight into the storage system. After that, I set up the filters for all 4 flowers and made sure everything was working perfectly. Right after that, I tackled my next mission, connecting this lever here to the blue and grey dye farms, so I wouldn't have to keep flying back and forth like a clueless bat. Only problem, I forgot to record the first 20 minutes of me building. Classic. But hey, thank goodness for the replay mod, so now you get to enjoy a little time lapse of me, the genius, trying to send a simple redstone signal over a mere 200 blocks. Watch me struggle. I used blue wool for the line because, you know, color coding, except plot twist. I accidentally hooked it up to the grey farm, but whatever, details, right? Then I repeated the whole process with grey wool. Well, mostly grey. I ran out of wool, so I used some stone. Grey is grey. Who's gonna know? Now, I only had one problem. I had to cross one line over the other to make sure the right color farm turned on with the right lever. Easy, right? Nah, I somehow made it way too complicated and built this mess right here. Don't ask. Then I had a sudden flash of brilliance, or common sense, who knows, and realized I could just run the redstone line underneath. Yeah, sometimes I really do make things harder than they need to be. Once everything was connected, I walked the line and placed repeaters wherever the signal was weak, and boom, worked like a charm. Feeling victorious, I took a look at my storage system, removed a few rogue sticks, and thought to myself, how did that even happen? After spending a solid 20 minutes fixing my chests and filters, again, I slapped a sign on the levers, because apparently even geniuses like me need a reminder of what these do. Then I got to work replacing the glass floor with colored wool for the dyes we already had farms for. Outside, that part was already built. White, blue, grey, and wait, yellow? Yep, yellow. Turns out yellow had been running the whole time while I was messing with the chests. So into the chest it went, and boom, yellow wool was now being crafted. I watched it happen for a bit, because hey, it's oddly satisfying. After that, I turned off the yellow dye and switched to red. Then came the most productive part of my day, running in circles for 20 minutes while waiting for the yellow wool to finish crafting. By the time I had 1469 yellow wool, I was ready to shut up and give you the 10-second time lapse you're all dying for. Then I took a moment to admire the whole thing from above. Pretty cool. Next, I tried to land in the water for some kind. Didn't go well. Anyway, I grabbed the red dye from the chest and put it back into production. Here's the funny part. I turned off the red dye farm, had a change of heart within 3 seconds, and flipped the lever again to turn it back on. Once I had enough red wool, I spent the next 10 minutes filling in the area. And that, my friends, is how you complete yet another chaotic project. So I suddenly really felt like checking out the whole thing from above again. And let me tell you, I nailed this landing. Totally wasn't close at all, not even a little. Since we're already down here, let me show you how mixing two dyes works. It's super simple. Just press these two buttons here for the colors you want to combine. Hit confirm, and voila, orange dye comes out and gets sorted like magic. Or at least, that's how it should have worked. Yeah, didn't quite go as planned. So I did the usual. Hopped over to my creative world to figure out where I messed up, fixed it, and round 2, it worked flawlessly. Then of course, another friendly visitor dropped by to ruin my day, pulled off a 360, fell down, but hey, crisis averted. Random encounters never fail to keep me on my toes. After that, I tossed some of the orange dye into wool production and swapped out the glass floor for orange wool. Then came the waiting game. Felt like hours, but after what was probably a few minutes, I got back to filling in the orange section. Next, I quickly fixed my Bonemeal Farm because something always breaks. Actually turned off the red dye farm this time and switched on the one for either magenta or pink. Honestly can't remember which, and I'm too lazy to check right now. After waiting around for a bit, until I had enough of the mystery dye whose name I totally forgot, I sent it off to the wool production. A few moments later, the wool started rolling in. And sticks? Nope, get out of here. Wait, did I just toss those back into the system? Oh nope, false alarm. All good. Anyways, here's the time lapse. So, then I shut off the magenta farm and turned on the pink one. See, I got the names right this time. You know how it goes by now. Throw the dye into production. Watch an episode of some weird golf anime. Swap out the floor with pink wool and boom, another time lapse. Next up, I turned off the pink farm and turned the red one back on. Why red again, you ask? Well, I needed enough red dye to mix it with blue. And you know what happens when you mix red and blue? No, neither did I at first. But don't worry, I got you. It makes purple. So, just like always. I tossed the purple dye into production, swapped the floor, and off we go with another time lapse. But this time, I'm not staying quiet. If you're still here, enjoying the video, hit that thumbs up and smash that sub button. I'm aiming for 1000 subscribers this year, and it would mean everything if you joined me on this journey. This video took a ton of effort, and your support would fuel me to create even more. Now that I've talked through the entire time lapse, I might as well keep going. Next up is light blue. I'll spare you the entire process and just skip straight to the time lapse. And just like that, we filled 10 out of 16 colors. Only grey, black, brown, cyan, green and lime left. Easy, right? Yeah, except I've been putting off the black dye farm for way too long. So I once again postponed the black dye farm and headed off toward the jungle. Some of you might already know what farm I'm building next. That's right, brown dye. The only way to get brown is with cocoa beans. When I got to the jungle, I witnessed some forest fires. Seriously, someone should do something about this. Grabbed a few cocoa beans and flew right back. Then I said hello to a couple of visitors, made fun of of them, and of course did a little teabagging. After that I gathered everything I needed for the farm, spotted another creeper eyeing my super smelter like it wanted to blow the whole thing sky high, disarmed it, and then got into a fist fight with a zombie that tried to break into my little hut. Why a fist fight, you ask? Because my axe is practically falling apart. Once that was handled, I went back to my favorite hobby, questioning my life choices. Then it was finally time to build the farm. Now with a farm this small, you'd think there's not much room for error, but you know me, that's never the case. And then, just to add to the fun, I was interrupted by a very angry cocoa farmer and his grandma in chainmail. Spent another 20 minutes searching for where I messed up before heading back to my creative world to figure it out. Once I finally fixed it, I collected my well-deserved cocoa beans. Don't ask how long I stood there, holding my right mouse button. Of course, I had to overcomplicate a simple task because the Bonemeal water stream needed to be extended. After an unnecessary amount of work, I ended up with this masterpiece. Don't even ask. Then I activated the autograph function, sat back, swapped out the floor, and waited for the browner wool to finish. Once there was enough wool, I got back to filling in the section. I can't wait for this to be done. After that, I jumped straight back into work. Time for the next farm, green. So I headed toward the desert, gathered up a few cacti, fended off some tomb raiders, and hoped my axe wouldn't break just by looking at it wrong. Once I had enough cacti, I thought, alright, time to build the cactus farm. But then reality hit me like a truck. I apparently needed 700 smooth sandstone slabs. So I raided all my chests, grabbed every bit of sand I could find, and then it was finally farm time. I started by filling this massive area with glass, which is where the cacti will eventually fall into. Then I got to work placing down all the cacti and sand. My helmet just broke, but at least I've still got my shoes. Well, after placing all the cacti, I once again spent way too long doing the simplest tasks, like getting the water in the right places. Next, I built a better and prettier super smelter, this time with flooding my entire storage system and washing away part of my redstone. And here's how the farm works. The cacti fall down, get swept into the middle, and are sent over to the super smelter where they are cooked into dye. Then they get sent to the storage system. And now enjoy the time lapse. Once that was all taken care of, I combined green dye with white dye to make lime. At least that was the plan. The crafter got clogged again. How does this always happen? After fixing it, the lime dye started pouring in. I crafted it into wool and filled in the section. Then I ran around in circles, or squares to be exact, trying to figure out what I could do next, mostly to avoid the black dye farm for as long as possible. That's when I remembered, we still don't have any cyan, so I quickly crafted some cyan dye using green and blue dye, and guess what? It worked on the first try. Once the wool was done crafting, I filled in that area. And then it was time to face the last, and by far the most dangerous farm. So first thing I did was craft myself some shiny new armor, because my last set, as you remember, broke during the whole farm building extravaganza. Next, it was off to the nether, because I needed 3 wither skulls for the farm I showed you earlier in the intro. Oh, and BTW, I decided I might as well kill the wither, so I needed 6 skulls, because, you know, who doesn't want to insta-mine blocks with a beacon, right? Off I went, looking for a nether fortress. Took a quick detour to grab some soul sand, because why not? After what felt like ages, I finally found the fortress, killed 2 wither skeletons right off the bat, and got a skull, with a 5.5% drop chance, mind you. That's some decent RNG. I went on to kill a few more, grabbed some nether wart, got set on fire multiple times, and then got wrecked by an ultra combo from a wither skeleton, and a blaze that hit me harder than I expected. After that, I looped the wither skeleton like I was playing Dead by Daylight, and finally took it down, since it would take forever to commentate every little thing I did. Here's a quick time lapse of me farming 6 wither skulls, and there it is, the last one. It cost me way too many totems and 2 whole episodes of Historia, but I did it. Back home, I threw my loot into my perfectly organized storage system, grabbed the stuff I needed for the wither fight, and prepared myself for the next task, killing the wither for a nether star. After using my big brain for once and figuring out the best way to kill it without, you know, dying, I came up with the idea of using iron golems. Genius, right? So I went over to the iron farm we built in the last episode, grabbed some iron blocks, and headed off far away from anything important to avoid any accidents. Dug myself a nice deep hole, made a long hallway for the golems, partially built the wither, and threw in some lighting so you can actually see what's happening. Then it was go time. Go minions. Attack. Minions? I think they're stuck. Oh yeah, they don't fit through. Oh no, this was a bad idea. Wait, I think if I dig out these blocks and maybe hit him, he should start to move. Oh no, I think he wants me now. Defend me, iron golems, please. I won't hurt any more villagers, I promise. Not even close. Get wrecked, noob. Feeling super proud of myself, I got a quick reality check when I tried to fly back up and absolutely ate it with a massive chunk of fall damage. Back home, I crafted my shiny new beacon, flew over to the dye farm, took the pants of the zombie, don't ask, and set up the beacon. And then, because you all know me and my amazing ideas, I realized you can't insta-mine deep slate, so the beacon was useless. But whatever, I started digging the hole for the farm anyway. 2 minutes and 45 seconds later, I got bored and decided to build a boomstick instead. Should have done that from the start. At one point, I almost got one hit KO by some TNT that must have been on drugs or something, so I took a few steps back. Once the hole was deep enough, I tore down the TNT duper and headed down. I lit the place up and started building the farm. Let me tell you, I was so nervous. You have no idea. One wrong block and the wither could escape and destroy everything I've built. So I started with the basic framework, taking my time. Next, I placed down the ice and just hoped I wouldn't mess it up, because one misstep with the ice and the whole farm could break. Then, the moment of truth, placing the wither. But first, I set up the iron golem to tank the wither's aggro. Then I built the wither's cozy little home, threw in some candles, slapped down a few slabs, some honey blocks, and topped it off with a boat on his head. Perfect. I forgot something in my chest upstairs, and on the way back down, Minecraft decided I wasn't wearing an elytra. Then, the moment of truth. Now it had to work. I think it's working. Yes, you have no idea how relieved I was, because I practiced this so many times in my creative world. Now just one last thing. Remove the water here and throw a snowball at the withers. Well, you know, don't ask. I was so relieved. Here's how it works. The wither skulls fly through the water because the wither is aggroed on the iron golem. The skulls get pushed up by the soul sand in the water and hit the stone structure above. Up there's a nether portal that I'll connect to a farm in the nether later. When mobs die from the wither skulls, they drop wither roses, which I can use to make black dye. Next, it was time for the nether farm. I went through the portal, noted my chords, broke the portal, and glitched onto the nether ceiling. I originally wanted to build a Hoglin farm, but I was in the wrong biome, and fixing that wasn't easy, so I quickly built this instead. Apparently, I deleted the footage of it because I'm a genius. It's a skeleton farm powered by wolves. When skeletons spawn, the wolves push them into the middle, and they go through the portal. There, they're turned into wither roses, supplying my farm with black dye. After waiting a bit and nearly dying from bouncing around like a rubber ball, I had enough black dye to craft it into wool. So enjoy the time lapse. Then all I had to do was craft grey dye by mixing white and black, turn that into wool, and finally shut up. After I finally filled in all the colors and had a farm for every dye in Minecraft, it was time for the real challenge, building the crafter in 1:32 scale. So I set off to gather all the resources I'd need. But of course, out of nowhere, leaves decided to turn as slippery as ice, and I needed coal, a ton of jungle wood, both naked and fully clothed oak logs, more coal, mangrove wood, and then, after collecting all of that, it was finally time to build the crafter. So I quickly tore down my perfect outline and got to work. And let me tell you, it was an amazing feeling after roughly 60 hours spent on this project to finally see it finished. And that's it, folks. After over 200 hours of work on this video, countless near-death experiences and way too many resources, the crafter is done. It's been a wild ride, but we made it through. If you're still here and haven't clicked away yet, I'd really appreciate a like and maybe even a sub. I'm trying to hit 1000 subscribers this year, and your support means a ton. Let me know in the comments which part of the build was your favorite, and if I missed anything important, like, you know, another farm. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.